Do, 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 do. Come on. hmm Okay. Okay. All right. We are finally live. All right. Welcome everyone back to Odys Talks. Naturally, this show is hosted by Odys Global, your one-stop shop for age domains, premium names, and websites, as well as several additional services, including fully managed hosting, 301 redirects, topic clusters, EAT, audit, and it was something else. Or maybe I just named everything. Oh, well, either way, you can just go to otis.global and check all the services. So yeah, today I'm joined by two more amazing guys. Thomas Smale, the founder of FE International, and Nick Jordan, founder of Workello and the Fat Graph community, or if I
Yep,
if
that's
I put it
correct.
correctly, because yeah, it really does seem like a community. Uh, so yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun and interesting conversation. So if you have any questions, either for Thomas or for Nick, make sure to put them down in the YouTube chat or in Facebook comments or LinkedIn. Just make sure to not miss out on the opportunity. All right, guys, why don't you introduce yourselves? Just whatever you would like to highlight beyond what I mentioned. So, Thomas, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much for having me here. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO of FE International. We're an investment bank or a mergers and acquisitions firm. So, in simple terms, we help founders exit their businesses. Over the years, our team have closed over 1,500 deals. We work on businesses currently up to about 150 million in valuation. We specialize in tech M&A. So a lot of what we do is relies on SEO or something related to SEO. Um, and currently I'm based in New York, which is where our head office is. We have a team in London, we have a team in Mumbai, Miami, San Francisco, uh, Warsaw. We have team all over, but most of the team here. And of course, everything we do at the moment, we're about 150 team members.
Oh, solid, solid. Thank you, Nick.
My name is Nick Jordan. I'm the founder of ContentDistribution.com, and over the last 5 years, we've hired hundreds of writers, published tens of thousands of pages, generated tens of millions of organics. And in the process, we created two different SaaS products, Workello.com and Cluster AI, used by over 7,000 SEOs, some cool brands like Deal.com, Mayo Clinic. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll get to all of that and we'll talk about all of that as well as many other things. So let's kick it off. Come on. Come on. Oh, this thing doesn't work again. Oh, well, okay. Well, I'll just have to go on and imitate Bruce Buffer. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Yeah, and I don't remember whatever he says,
That
introducing the
was that was
fighters
better
from the
than
corners.
Billionaire.
Thank you. Well, yeah. Well, one thing that I was really surprised when I was preparing for this conversation is that Thomas, you actually started off with selling domain names. It was quite surprising, and it was also like I was. It was really sort of I don't know funny, I'd say, in a good way, that you gave up on it because you didn't quite understand like the concept of the domain value and things like that, and eventually went on and created this company and are basically now like making 8 figures a year or something like that. So could you just share your thoughts and ideas on how did you like transition from uh, trying trying to do business in domain investing, let's put it that way, to uh, what you're doing now?
Yeah, so this is going back to 2008, 2009. So a lot of the platforms that exist today and information that exists today wasn't a thing at the time. There weren't really marketplaces for domains. I think the big player at the time would have been Cedo. You could go to some other places, didn't really exist. A lot of people were buying and selling domains, places like eBay, private forums like Digital Point. So it definitely wasn't the maturity of the market there is now. And then the SEO industry itself was not mature at all. The kind of metrics you went by back then for a domain was like PageRank. Tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush and all the other tools you have today didn't exist at all. So to value a domain, it was very arbitrary, and it was really quite honestly based on, does the name sound good, and is it a single word .com domain name? And even back then, all of the good names were taken and registered. So if you wanted to make money from domains, it kind of required either luck or some kind of speculation, because people weren't really buying domains for SEO purposes like they might be today. People will buy domains that have existing links, have existing authority, or whatever it might be, or maybe there's a previous brand built on it that didn't exist. So you're essentially relying on buying cheap somewhere and then selling for more elsewhere. The reason I pivoted quite quickly into buying and selling, I guess, websites or businesses is you can't fundamentally increase the value of a domain. All you can really do is change someone's perception of that name and what they might be able to do with it. It's not an actual business. Whereas if you buy a business, you can make changes to it to increase the revenue, increase the traffic, improve the branding. There's thousands of things you can do to improve a business. So to me, that made sense. And I quite quickly figured out how to buy something super small. So the first deal I was doing would be $100. You could improve that and then sell it for 500. And like I said, back then there weren't really any marketplaces for buying and selling websites. I think the early was, which is now called Flipper. Back then it was SitePoint, and SitePoint was like the original marketplace for buying and selling websites. But it was not a companies like FE International like we have today that like didn't exist back then. It wasn't a thing. You couldn't buy and sell businesses.
In 2008, I was going to say, in 2008, a lot of stuff didn't exist. Like the iPhone came out in 2007, YouTube was acquired in 2006, and so the young entrepreneurs today have it easy. All this infrastructure exists, so you can go to market and start a business with dollars in your bank account, and that just didn't simply exist back when you were building FE.
Yeah, definitely. And there was lots of, I mean, there still exists today, but there was lots of scams. Like it was very much the Wild West. Lots of scams, lots of people screwing people over.
That's what I keep hearing.
Very difficult to get started. Quite honestly, it took me ages of getting screwed over on deals until I started figuring out how to get a bit more savvy. And part of the reason I founded FE is I thought, well, there must be a better way to do this. Surely people with legitimate businesses want a kind of reliable and safe way to sell them with an advisor, rather than kind of running the gauntlet of eBay and other places like that, which really aren't set up for kind of buying domains. It's like companies like Odys did not exist back then. If you guys existed back then, I never would have started FE International, because there would have been no need for that service, because essentially you've helped legitimize the industry of reselling domains effectively. But that did not exist then at all.
I have a bunch of questions. Back in 2008, how much did it cost to build a website? How did you take payments over the internet? How much?
So payments, I think back then it was a lot of time you'd use PayPal. So PayPal would still, I know PayPal's still kind of popular today, but everyone hates PayPal. I think my personal PayPal, and we don't have time on the stream today, but I think my personal PayPal account got banned about 12 years ago, because if you're taking payments through PayPal regularly, there would always be problems with disputes and stuff like that. So it was impossible. I think to build sites back then, WordPress wasn't really a thing. People were using like Dreamweaver, and I'm not a designer at all. I can't really build a site. It was Dreamweaver, had to have a working understanding of things like cPanel, like actually physically going into the not the server but the back end and like making adjustments to a site, editing like DNS records and stuff like that. But yeah, my recollection is it was mostly Dreamweaver. I don't actually know when WordPress was launched, but I think it was somewhere around that time, and then it got quite popular quite quickly. So that was part of the reason there was value in people were building websites, technical people were building websites, selling them with like no business, no monetization or anything like that. So the opportunity very early on is you could buy those, turn them into a business by generating any form of sales with any sort of basic marketing. And things like Facebook existed then. So a lot of what we did marketing wise was Facebook or in very niche forums. So kind of instead of being on a live chat on YouTube like everyone is now watching this, you'd be in a forum like Digital Point talking to people about your like domain names or your business you've built. So that's kind of how it all got started. So I mean, it's exactly the same today. There's just a lot more legitimate outlets for doing these things. And if we had this conversation 14 years ago, I would never be interviewed on a podcast because people would be like, what the hell are you doing? This isn't a real business. This doesn't even make sense. Whereas today you say it and you're like, well, of course it makes sense that you're buying, selling websites and helping people sell online businesses because there's a big market for it. But that was not the case back in 2000.
Can you imagine selling a business on PayPal today? We've come a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember you'd get like $2,000 and I'd need that $2,000 to pay my credit card for the month because I bought it on credit card at the beginning and then PayPal freezes it. That was the reality. That was the reality of the industry for a long time.
I'm also banned from PayPal, by the way, so we have enough people to start a club.
Yeah.
I'm not banned from PayPal, but I've tried to like transfer some funds outside of my country, and just probably a month back or 2 months back, and I somehow couldn't. I still didn't figure out why is that, but PayPal became strange, or it was strange all the time. I don't know. Yeah. So Nick, let's talk about you a little bit. As you mentioned during our conversations leading to this chat, you've built quite a few businesses, and you mentioned that you founded several companies as well. And it's I like the combination of having you two on this show because like you're pretty much in the same industry, but like on two opposite ends of the spectrum, like Thomas is buying and selling, and you're building and then selling, and you're like more and more like invested into the infrastructure of building companies, building sites and stuff, like into the SEO content and things. So why don't, in your own perspective, like in your own point of view, why don't you settle to something like buying and selling businesses and keep on building stuff?
I think if I didn't have I didn't have this entrepreneurialism or journey to express my creativity in, I'd probably be a criminal.
Sounds like you've grown up in a favela somewhere in Brazil.
I lived in Brazil and I did hang out in some favelas, and my team is based in Serbia, and I tell them all the time, listen, if I was born there, I'd work at a gas station because I wouldn't be able to learn English. I'm very fortunate to be born into not only the U.S. but Seattle, one of the most tech-heavy cities to benefit from kind of everything over the last 20 years.
Okay.
So I got lucky. Yeah, like I said, I one path was criminal and one path was CEO, and fortunately, I had very good parents who didn't let me mess up too bad.
Okay, and what keeps you gives you the drive to keep on creating stuff, starting stuff, building stuff?
I'm not an artist. I'm not artistic. I can barely read my own handwriting. I can't play music. I don't speak foreign languages. One of the only abilities I do have to kind of express myself is through building. And I think I've launched 3 SaaS products. I've built a 7-figure agency, and it's just intellectually stimulating to kind of push the limits on what you're capable of, and just and reach scale and impact. I think that's what's really exciting. Is really, for me, it doesn't matter which kind of business I'm building. I could probably sell cement or dirt as long as I was doing it on a big enough scale, because then the problems become interesting.
Okay. What keeps you two in the SEO industry? I mean, of course, I mean, you started from it probably, but you're still in it, or like tightly connected to it, let's say.
It's 6 years ago. I've been working in tech my whole career in a sales role, and 6 years ago I quit to learn SEO to start a SaaS product. I didn't know what that SaaS product was going to be, and I'm 6 years into my 5-year plan. So the SEO community is we're a bunch of rascals and misfits, and I like to say Hillary Clinton was talking about us when she was talking about the basket of deplorables. But we're a lovable community, and it's a lot of fun to be in it.
What about you, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting hearing the backstory. I think most people have something kind of similar, like didn't do well at school, didn't really pay attention. I don't know if I'd necessarily be a criminal, but I'd probably not have a very interesting job if I didn't have a business. And I think to Nick's point, part of the reason I like M&A is we're always working on new businesses, and while I don't necessarily own that business myself, we're helping someone sell that business. We learn a lot about it, and you kind of get that entrepreneurial itch out of the way, because I don't need to worry about starting a new business every day, because I'm constantly seeing new things, which is part of the reason I like this. Otherwise, I'd constantly be launching new things as well.
Because you don't have to build it. The grind is real.
Yeah, for sure. Which is, I mean, and obviously this is not a sales pitch, but part of the reason people choose to buy businesses is you can skip a lot of the hard parts of particularly the first 2 or 3 years, which is really where it can be a grind, making no money, building things up.
Time and market is real. Even if you're good in year 2, like by year 4, like things just start clicking a lot more than they did in those first 24 months.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely kind of, I would say, like, reputation compounds. If you do a good job and you're in the right place on a consistent basis, over time that will only grow, only improve. More people will talk about you, more business will come to you. I have to work less hard today for a business to come to us than I did 5 years ago, because more people know who we are, more people have worked with us, and more people talk about us, hopefully in a positive way.
Well, because you have a reputation, you are recognized, you have authority. It's like you're keeping your real life EEAT straight. Yeah. You also mentioned that, not today, but in one of your interviews, that you started flipping websites for fun, Thomas.
Yeah, I guess it's really just like side income when I was at not university or college, depending which country you're in, but in the UK you'd call it university. Yeah, because I wanted to do something, and at that time I played a lot of online poker. Online poker was the thing in the UK. I don't know if it was ever really a big thing in the US or elsewhere.
It was huge.
It was.
So spent a lot of time doing that, but it was almost, I never saw a path to becoming a professional poker player to make a living. So I figured I could try and make some money on the side, buying and selling websites, and didn't really expect it to become a real business until started doing a couple of deals, which was really early on. And then you started to get word of mouth business, because no one was really doing it, and no one was really doing it legitimately. So it always surprises me how much you can achieve in business just by turning up consistently, being responsive, doing what you'll say you'll do, and like actually being honest. If you do those 4 things over 10 years, you are basically guaranteed to be a millionaire. almost,
One
I
of my
think my
favorite
general
quotes.
belief is almost impossible not to get there if you do those 4 things.
One of my favorite quotes is from Naval, and he said, "Careers are measured in decades, not months or years."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to look at it. I think lots of people, particularly today, because there's, Nick, to your point, there's so much information out there, but that's also a bad thing, because I think a lot of people get put off because all they hear is other people being super successful.
Oh, yeah.
They don't actually really truly understand the context of how long they've been working to get there, or how, quite honestly, how misleading social media can be, and people who seem super successful or seem like they figured it out in a month and now make 8 figures a year, which
Yeah.
in my experience basically never happens. That's not like common at all. It takes often decades for people to be successful. I know many entrepreneurs who started in their early 20s and they don't really start getting to any sort of level of financial security until their mid 30s, early 40s. They might have been doing it 10, 15, 20 years until they kind of
You're
get financially comfortable. And that's not uncommon at all. I'd say that's much more common than someone who goes from 0 to 1 million a year in revenue from with zero experience. No, it's very uncommon to see that.
you're talking about me. I started my first startup at around 20, and I really became, financially successful from my own businesses at 35.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, pretty similar for me. I'm 35 now, but like it definitely starts to compound up. For me, it starts to compound quite significantly after 10.
And it feels like it comes fast. Like at a certain point, it just like you just like reach liftoff mode.
It does. I mean, particularly in honestly, like a couple of big deals, or like you only need one business or one website to do really well if you manage to find a way to. I remember years ago we had a site we were involved in, and we picked up loads of links. Not necessarily organically; it was kind of a planned SEO plan, but it was one of those things that actually worked really well. We picked up tons of authoritative links, and we went from having a site with basically no authority to a bunch of authority within about 3 months, and then started to get a bunch of organic traffic. But I probably tried that same thing for 5 years and never got anything, and then suddenly it kind of overnight suddenly becomes successful. But it definitely wasn't the first attempt.
Someone much smarter than me said the only way to lose at entrepreneurship is to quit, because you're exactly right. You only need one business to pop off. I'm on like number 6 or 7.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you fail as long as you stick to one of them.
You just need to win once. Yeah.
yeah. It was like, I think it was a second or third edition of the Odys Talks live stream, and there were Greg Elfring, Craig Campbell, and I think Jason Dahlman participating in it. And Greg from Empire Flippers, he was telling a story about some site that was built by some lady, if I remember it correctly. But the thing about that story is that like it was full of like really bad content, like crappy, cheap, bad looking content. But she's had like one or two like really decent articles, and those couple of articles they like generated the traffic, they generated the authority. She got like those couple of pieces of content like covered all of the expenses and earned her money. So that's to your point of like having at least you need to have one successful business to lift off.
Well, post helpful content update. I'm not sure the strategy of 1,000 bad blog posts and a couple good ones is going to work, but it sounds like it worked for her at the time.
Well, yeah, it was at the time. Yeah, so that was the moral of the story. And to the point, both of you guys also mentioned that Thomas in particular, that you have to like be consistent and just keep on doing what you're doing. I think it also applies to many other like areas in your life, like well, sports, for example, right? You just have to show up and just keep on working. So uh, so yeah, it's just from what I get from all of the conversations I've had during these live streams, especially during those that were like more inclined, had a greater twist towards like building and selling businesses, not just SEO, but like businesses in particular, doing business in particular, is that yeah, you just have to be consistent and just have to be persistent. It's like, and of course adapt to changes, because like Google updates, it's survival of the fittest.
I think all good things in life come from consistency over long periods of time. Fitness, like you said, sports, business, relationships, your diet. Um, but unfortunately, at the same time, being consistent over long periods of time is like the hardest thing in the
Oh
world for
yeah.
humans to do.
Oh yeah,
Humans
absolutely.
are not good at that.
Yeah, I always like recall this. It was like a meme or some say motivational picture, or something like that. That like when people think about success, they like see just the tip of the iceberg. When others are already successful, but they don't see all the steps that were taken, all the years it took for them to become that successful. So yeah, that's also to the point you were talking about. So yeah, getting back to like to building and then selling businesses, like both of you probably in different aspects have worked in on ranking businesses on whether it's a website or something else. But since it's more about like the SEO industry, so let's focus on sites. Um, there are cases when like a website business is, let's say, it's either been hit by a penalty or it was mishandled by its owner, but the owner wants to wants it to soar and then wants to sell it for a profit, right? So let's just try and do this sort of an exercise, like Nick, since you're involved in like in the creative process, let's say, what steps would you take to recover it, let's say, and make it rank, and then we'll move on to Thomas.
So we've never had an active project be hit by a Google update, and so I'm not a recovery expert. I really don't understand how to recover. We
Okay.
have had projects after we end the engagement get hit, and what I can see from my experiences, there seems to be some level of ratio where if your website has a level of unhelpful content, I don't know if it's 20% or 40% or 60%, eventually that unhelpful content will impact the rankings of your helpful content. Um, do you guys have any insight on what that ratio could be?
I don't.
And
Thomas?
it seems like
Don't track
Google
it in a
measures it
sort of
over.
scientific way.
It seems like Google measures it not just like a static snapshot, but over a period of time, which makes the recovery even more difficult because you implement the changes and then you don't see anything for potentially months,
Hmm.
which makes learning requires a tight feedback cycle, at least effective learning. So I haven't seen much recovery information come out about the HCU yet. The other thing I'm really interested to hear about is, everyone's talking about how to recover from HCU, but how do you build a new content site post HCU?
Like based on
Nobody's
the new
talking about that.
guidelines?
No one's talking about that. And if it really requires, brand signals like referral traffic and branded searches, that's just not something small businesses have a lot of. And so I'm kind of interested to see how the game changes. For portfolio owners, how do you build brand? You can build one brand, like that's hard enough. How do you build brands around 10 projects? That sounds impossible. So I'm kind of interested to see what happens over the next 6 months.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, there'll be some people who will do really well, who you'll hear about, some people who will do really badly and you won't hear about them at all. And there won't be that many people in the middle. Because some people don't even really know there's been any sort of update recently because their sites have just continued to grow and they have no idea what's going on. And other people have had entire portfolios completely destroyed. And then there's not that many people in the it in the middle.
The detailed I was just reading Twitter today. The detailed.com guy, Glenn Aesop or something, released a study. He's tracking 10,000 keywords, and he's tracking the publishers that rank for these keywords. They're commercial affiliate keywords. And what he saw is that in the top 10 results are entirely like massive companies like Red Ventures and Meredith or whatever. And there's very, very few independent companies in the top 10 search right now for commercial affiliate keywords.
That's interesting.
Forbes ranks for pest control costs. You know, when Google leans too hard on authority, I feel like that's what you get is you get Forbes ranking for literally everything. And I'm not sure that's a better world than the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels worse to me. Particularly knowing, if you know anything about the industry, everyone knows you can essentially just buy a contributor spot on Forbes. It's not actually, these are not like trained professional journalists writing about this stuff. It's contributors like you and I who have bought an account. So
that's where parasite SEO comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of the HTU, right after it, like probably a week or two after it, maybe a month, just don't remember exactly when it happened, when it took place. A lot of SEO folks on Twitter were complaining about like Quora and Reddit starting to get higher rankings, like so it was fun.
I'm one of the guys who appends Reddit to a lot of my searches, but at the same time, when I see Reddit in the searches and I didn't append it, usually it's from like 2017, and it's completely unhelpful if I didn't ask to see it. And so I think they need to tighten up there and probably restrict the Reddit links to like the last year.
I think Reddit were talking about de-indexing themselves from Google entirely. So I think there's a lot of like uproar about searches and stuff like that. I have no idea if that's going to happen, but that was the rumor.
I think it's an AI thing. I think they're salty about not getting paid for licensing all their data.
Yeah, probably.
That would make sense.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but like Kazradesh said during our last conversation, which was like a month and a half ago, I think, every Google update just takes time, and just you will see its effects only after a certain period, like could be 2 weeks, could be a month. So yeah,
this one feels different to me. This one feels like it's bigger than the last couple of years.
Takes longer than the previous ones.
I don't know. It just feels like it's a bigger change. Like it's instead of an incremental change, it's like a very big change.
Okay, I see. Well, time will show. Getting back to my initial question. So the ranking, the site and stuff, at what point do you understand that it's time to sell it? Because a lot of people are saying, like, I've been asking this question to a lot of times, and a lot of people are saying, like, when you're on the swing, on the upper swing, but yeah, a lot of people at the same time also want to keep it going and just don't know when to stop, and they just get past that upper swing, reach the plateau, and eventually, like, if they don't get to sell the site or the project list, the site, at some point it'll just start declining in terms of traffic and revenue as well. So at what point do you understand that it's time to sell the website?
I think from a organic traffic perspective, there's never a perfect answer. So you would, if you interviewed 100 people who successfully sold their business, some of them probably would have held it much longer than the three of us would have thought they should have held it. Some we would have thought they've sold way too early, and some have sold just at the right time. And to my point about people who never get affected by updates, some people have sites for 10 years, they haven't been affected at all. It wouldn't even occur to them to sell because there's a risk of an update. I think while the SEO industry is quite big and quite vocal, there's still a lot of people who build businesses relying on SEO and don't they're not in these communities. They don't read anything to do with SEO. They just kind of write their blog weekly, link to a bunch of other blogs in the space, share it on like Pinterest, and that's really all they're doing. And they do that for a long time. They never even change the strategy. So it's a whole ecosystem of those people as well who aren't in our kind of SEO
The
echo
mom bloggers.
chamber.
The mom bloggers
Yeah,
are crushing
exactly.
it. They crush.
In terms of like when you should sell, I usually think, particularly if you're not already independently wealthy, you should sell when your business reaches the value that is life changing. So even though you could potentially hold the business for longer, and what that life changing number is will very much vary. Some people will say 1 million, some people say 20 million, some people say 10, some people say 100 million, some people say 100,000. There's not a right answer to that, but I think it could be ignorant sometimes not to sell when you get to that level, because you can create financial security for yourself, your family, friends, whoever you're trying to create financial security for, often for generations. And the only risk is that you could have held on longer and the business could have been worth more. But to the next point right at the start, how many entrepreneurs are there building successful businesses who can't then build another one? It's not success is not mutually exclusive. You can't only do it once. Very few people will only ever have one good business idea or one thing that takes off. Particularly if you make a bunch of money from a deal, you can then start your next business and you can afford to pay for better content. You can, whether you agree with buying links or not, you can afford to acquire better links. You can get nicer design. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can get custom plugins, all sorts of things you can do with cash. So I think as an entrepreneur, it's important to have a liquidity event or sell a business to create a financial platform for yourself and your family, and that like financial security. And again, that often varies. I mean, it's usually between 2 and 5 million, I'd say, for the majority of people. Again, could be a lot less, could be a lot more. If you get to that level, sell, bank the cash. If you never want to work again, in most cities in the world, you never have to work again with that. If you're smart, even somewhere like New York, you can buy an apartment for say $1 million and you still have 4. You're not going to have a particularly great life, but you can definitely live off that. So that's always my advice, and that's not technical advice at all, because you could look at a business and say, well, this could be 10 times bigger, but if there's a chance that business can go to 0 and you never do it again, you've potentially squandered the opportunity to create generational wealth, or at least generational financial security for your family. And if you do, I guess a lot of that also depends on your kind of socioeconomic class and background.
Okay.
Like a lot of people in the industry don't have rich families or trust funds or anything like that. So kind of here making it for ourselves. So maybe that answer changes if you have a kind of financial security net to fall back on from family, or you know you're going to inherit $20 million. Like I'm personally not going to, so I have to kind of do what's right for family as I go along.
Oh, cool.
So when are you selling, Thomas? When are you getting acquired?
Well, I don't know. If you want to make me an offer and write me a check, we can maybe like talk offline. But no, I mean, well, I guess the thing with M&A is like every day we're selling something. It's just not necessarily our business. I have always continued to invest though. So I do, like, profits get invested into usually buying one business a year on the side, which we then operate, and that's been working quite well since day one of the business. And every year that acquisition gets slightly bigger because the company grows. We have more money to invest. That's always what I've done.
So there's not a lot of acquisition marketplaces, but acquired.com, I think, just raised that some sort of valuation. What did you guys think about, kind of platforms raising money to do what they did? Did they get a good valuation? Is it too high? Is it too low? Was it a good idea?
I think they got a good valuation. The challenge in the space is their value proposition starting out was they were just going to be free for sellers, and they were just going to charge buyers. And think the more skeptical people in the industry, or the older people with grey beard and like no hair left, because we've been doing this for a long time, eventually they would have to start charging fees, which they now do. So they've gone from raising a bunch of money, built some like fantastic traction in the industry on the basis that they would never charge anyone any fees other than buyers. And then I'm not going to call it bait and switch, but some people might call it bait and switch. They then added the fee for sellers, and then essentially it just becomes like any other marketplace. There's not really anything unique about it. And if you're selling a business, you really have three choices, or three high-level choices. You either sell it yourself, you sell it on a marketplace, like Acquire, like Flipper, like Biz by Sell. There's, I guess, lots of different options. Or you go to an M&A firm, and varying levels of work. The M&A firm, like us, will do the vast majority of work for you. We'll run a competitive process, but we're the most expensive from a percentage perspective. The value add we add is, in almost all cases, the fee you pay us will be offset by the fact you'll get more for the business than you would on a marketplace or selling yourself. Then you can sell on a marketplace, or you can just do the whole thing yourself. So all of those are viable options, but I don't think, talking about Acquire raising money, I don't think it was ever viable. It was never going to be a viable business long term, just charging kind of a couple of $100 a year to buyers. It's physically impossible to run a business in this space. There's too many like challenging things to deal with, and too many like new competitors all the time coming along who will promise something better for less money, which is kind of, if anyone with a business has had a competitor come along and that's been their kind of claimed competitive advantage, they'll be better, and they're better because they cost less. But
I mean, that's the playbook for fintech, right? Like first it was PayPal, then it was Payoneer. They were awesome. Now they're big, and now they're not awesome. Same thing with Wise. Wise started off great, and now they're having a ton of issues now that they've penetrated the market. And it just kind of seems like the normal business trajectory to make aggressive promises, use it to grow, and then do the same thing your competitors are doing.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, with my, let's say, pro Acquire hat on, new companies being in the industry is always good for the industry as a whole, because it's creating more awareness of the industry. So more people are thinking about buying and selling businesses because they exist. So that's good for everyone in the ecosystem, whether or not you have a vested interest in their success or not. We all have a vested interest in the industry success. So legitimate companies, which they are coming along, are good for everybody. So agreeing with valuation, business model, positioning, and things like that are not the same as believing that it's beneficial to have legitimate companies in the industry. And Vladimir, you mentioned like Greg from Empire Flippers. Exactly same with us. I'd say we have might call it a fierce rivalry or a friendly rivalry.
Yeah.
Or at least we definitely did in the past. At the lower end of the deals we would work on, and the upper end of the deals they would work on. There would sometimes be some overlap, but I think we've both, at least in private, agreed that the existence of the other company has been beneficial, particularly over the years. And like I said, it was wild west. You need more than one legitimate company in the industry to help get out of that. And like a lot of the stuff they've done, a lot of the content marketing, the stuff that like Justin, Greg, and I guess Joe have produced has been good for the industry overall.
Absolutely. And yeah, competition is healthy. I mean,
to be honest, I'd hate to compete with Greg just because he's such a nice guy. It's hard to like, even if he's my competitor, you talk to him in person, you're like, man, I want this guy to be my best man at my wedding.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah. If you have to, if you decide to compete with him, you have to beat him in Warhammer or D&D, something like that.
I'm screwed.
Thomas, have there been cases of you advising your clients not to sell?
All the time, I'd say.
Really?
Like,
why? I mean, what are some of the most common cases?
So it might be literally that the business is not great because it started declining. Maybe they've been hit by an update, and sometimes people will, I'm not sure why this still happens today, sometimes people will try to be sneaky about it, and they'll kind of come in and they'll say, yeah, my site's fine. Here's my earnings from last month. And they don't tell you they literally just got affected by an update. I think sometimes people think that a transaction can literally be like that. So you come in and the next day someone wires you kind of a couple of $1 million without looking at Google Analytics or any sort of like onboarding process. Like that's definitely not the case today. Sometimes people just the valuation they want, or the kind of financial security number that I mentioned, or whatever. Everyone has personal reasons for coming up with their number. And one thing we never do is tell people what that number should be.
Mm-hmm.
The number you personally want is the number you personally want. Does that mean your business is worth that? Almost never. No. Where we make our money is where those two overlap. So your business is now worth what your number is, and then that's where a deal can happen. But that's definitely not the case for a lot of people. So a lot of times you say to people, look, you shouldn't sell now because your business is worth $20 million and you want $50 million for your business. So we can try and sell, but you're going to be disappointed in 3 to 6 months time when we say, hey, look, the best offer is 22 million, because they still want 50 and there's nothing you can do to change that. So yeah, most of the time it's just a timing thing. Like they're not there yet. Doesn't necessarily mean the business is bad, but yeah.
Thomas, I have a self-serving question. I think there's a lot of content on like selling content sites, but there's not a lot of like, what about SEO SaaSes? Like, have you guys sold any SaaSes that are specific to SEO? And like, what were they, and kind of how did they go down, and what kind of multiples did they get?
Yeah, so I think probably the best known like SaaS tool we sold was called Answer the Public, and it sold to Neil Patel, and everyone in the SEO industry knows who Neil Patel is.
Yeah.
He's a very legitimate, very genuine, like business builder in the space. I think a lot of people think that Neil from social media is not legitimate and doesn't have a real business, but I've seen his financials, and I would say his business is bigger than 99.99% of people in the SEO space who complain about him and his content. Like he knows how to play the game, he knows how to do marketing. But no, Answer the Public was probably one of the better known deals.
That is a big one.
Did over the last few years. Sorry, what was that?
Any other SEO SaaSes that have been sold?
Yeah, we have some we're working on at the moment. Actually, it literally just got announced publicly yesterday, so I can tell you a business called linkbuilder.io, which was a link building service business that had an element of software in there. We sold a business called Copymatic.ai, which is a tool for creating AI content. But this was a couple of years ago, and this was in the very early days of AI content creation. We sold a bunch of SEO related. It's probably the most popular vertical for us is SaaS. It's probably what we're best known for. And then within that is marketing. SaaS is probably what we do the most of. A lot of deals, when they happen, stay completely quiet. The only reason I can talk about linkbuilder.io is because that got announced by the acquirer. Exactly same with Answer the Public. Neil and his team announced publicly that they acquired it, but a lot of the time these deals are kept like very quiet because there's always concerns about what happens if someone hears the business has been sold.
Is there anything you can share about Answer the Public? I think everybody knows about the acquisition, and I don't think anyone knew it was sold by you. So is there any public information that isn't well known that you're able to share?
Well, I'd say the seller's definitely got a good deal. And if you ask Neil privately, I actually spoke to him the other day. He was not complaining, but he was implying that he thought he paid a high multiple. And obviously our job, to be clear, we represent the seller. So our job is to get as much as possible for the seller. Good deal. I'd say, interestingly, part of the reason they acquired that business for what they did is things like the domain authority was extremely strong. And obviously there are cheaper ways than an 8-figure acquisition to acquire domain authority, but that was a site that had a lot of relevant traffic and authority in an industry they already had other tools like Uber Suggest. So part of the reason we reached out to them is we said, hey, you bought Uber Suggest, you should buy this business as well. Which is, I mean, a lot. I know this isn't really a question, but a lot of our job is finding buyers and kind of explain to them why they should buy a particular business and why it's a good fit for them based on what they already own or what they've bought before. But I'd say it's fair to say it was a pretty good deal for everyone involved, but the buyers were not necessarily purely looking at it from a profit perspective. They were looking at it like how accretive it is to their wider, much, much bigger business. And like, does it immediately add value as soon as they close the acquisition? And the answer was yes. They were a bit less concerned about, oh, is it making $150,000 or $200,000 profit a month, which a lot of buyers are. But if you have a strategic reason to acquire, that's not always your main motivation.
Oh, well, just wanted to say that your perspectives, I mean, both of your perspectives are really different from the perspectives Greg and Charles Float shared last week, because they were more inclined into like building like affiliate sites and selling affiliate sites rather than SaaSes, you know. So this is really interesting. So whoever's watching or will be watching the recorded episode, just watch these two episodes side by side and then make your own conclusions, because there are golden nuggets in both of these approaches, let's say. Yeah, wow, that's really
Well,
interesting. Didn't expect that.
I think building SaaS is very intellectually interesting because there's just so many places to work within the business. The affiliate site stuff is less interesting, but I gotta say, sometimes I feel like an idiot for building SaaS, not affiliates. It's just so much. It feels like it's a much simpler model, and sometimes I just want to like win instead of rack my brain and push the limits of.
I mean, I think everybody I ever speak to in the industry, including me, always wants someone else's business.
Yeah.
So everyone you meet in the affiliate world wants a SaaS business. Everyone with a SaaS business wants an affiliate business. Everyone with a service business wants a SaaS business. Everyone with a SaaS business
want the
wants a
HT
service
revenue,
business.
cash flow. Yeah.
I would say that of all of the business models we represent, SaaS is probably the hardest to get started and the hardest to grow, but the valuation multiples are consistently the highest. I think partly because of that, and also because you've got the recurring revenue, which otherwise you don't. It's uncommon to see in affiliate sites. It's not impossible to see recurring commissions, but it doesn't happen very often. And service businesses can often have recurring revenue as well, but a lot of people hate the idea of managing people. And if you're buying a service business, that's inevitable. Hence why SaaS businesses tend to be quite popular. And just the barrier to entry, to your point, Nick, the reason you see grass is green on the other side with other businesses is you know how hard it is to build that business. So I think
I found that
should be
true.
the positive takeaway.
You're totally right on. Everybody wants someone else's business.
Oh, always every single client we represent, I'm like, oh, maybe I should just like sell up and go buy this and run it instead. It seems like a better business. It's easier to
run. Easy to run. That's the way to put it. Right. I think we have to wrap up little by little. So next week we're not going to have a live stream episode because we're going to be me, myself, and Odys Global CEO Alex Drew. We're going to be at the Chiang Mai SEO conference. So if you're there, make sure to stop by our booth on Thursday or Friday or Thursday and Friday and say hi, have a chat with us, or meet us during the SEO week and just jot us a message in the Hoover app or on Facebook or wherever you want to. It's going to be a great event. I'm a bit intimidated by the scale of it, to be honest, but it already seems really, really fun. Where can people find you online, like the most efficient ways of doing it, if they want to reach out to you.
Well, I've already found Nick. I've been kind of stalking all of his channels while we've been talking. So Nick, you now have some new connections and new new followers.
Yeah. So where can people find
But
you?
for
Yeah.
me, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook,
Just Thomas Smale.
email. My email, I'm not going to put it in the chat because I'll get too many emails, but thomas@feinternational.com is my direct email. So if you listen to this and you email me and say you listen to this, I'll definitely reply to you personally. I'll commit to that. And FE International, we're active on all the socials as well.
Okay. And Nick?
Nick from Seattle on Twitter, Nick from Seattle on LinkedIn, Nick from Seattle on Facebook, Fat Graph Content Ops, contentdistribution.com. Where I got too many
Awesome guys. Is there anything like you'd like to say to the viewers and listeners before we stop the recording, go offline?
I don't have anything to sell. I think maybe I should turn up with something to sell in the future, but I don't. But we offer anyone that wants to know what their business is worth. We offer free valuations, so feel free to reach out. We're happy to chat. To your earlier question, we speak to lots of people who aren't ready to sell for many years, so always happy to have a early conversation and figure out where you are now and maybe where you need to get to.
Thomas, I'll shoot you a DM.
Please do.
Okay, thanks everyone for watching, listening. You can reach out to Thomas or Nick if you have any questions, suggestions, or whatever. You can reach out to Odys Global as well. Just jot us a message to hi@odys.global or find us on social media. All of our social media channels are listed below in the description box. And yeah, there's also a link to our marketplace. If you still don't have the access, make sure to get it. It's free. And yeah, so yeah, stay tuned and see you in 2 weeks. I'm not yet sure who's going to be my guests next time. So just, yeah, as I said, stay tuned. Right? So see you next time.
Thanks, guys.